Hey guys, it's Viejo here, and we are into the last week of November in 2022. Got kind of a overcast day to start out with today, but that's all cleared off and it's sunny outside, but still cool. I'm looking at about 59 degrees here in the garage, but that's fine. We got a little goose down here to help. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what I look for in buying a used mold online from a neighbor, from a fellow caster, whatever. And I get asked questions periodically of, okay, I want to go buy this mold. Here's, a used one from eBay, or, what do you think about this one, Viejo? So I thought, well, let's just kind of sum all of this up, and I'll show you the things that I look for if I'm thinking about buying any particular mold from an online auction site or one of our bullet casting forums like castbullets.com or the Artful Bullet, or one of those. First, let me show you just a little bit about my mold collection, and this is not about bragging rights. This is just about to show you that I do have a lot of molds that I have bought used, okay, in one form or the other. So let's take a quick look there, and then we'll come back. These are my Hensley and Gibbs molds. Okay, those are all bought used. Down here we have the Lyman molds. Most of these were bought used. I bought a couple of these new. These are my M&P molds. NOE, Seikos are in here. These are my handles. A lot of these came secondhand along with some of the molds that I bought used. There are a couple in there that I bought new. These Seikos, for example, I bought those new. I don't have as many RCBS molds as I do the Lymans, but I do have a few. And then my Lee 2 cavities are in here. And the Lee 6 cavities that I have. Let's start this discussion off with reasons that you might have for buying a used mold in the first place. The most obvious, I think, is probably going to be price. A new Lyman 2-cavity mold's around $90 to $100, and you can often pick up one that's in great shape for 50 bucks. Okay, considerable savings. And for that, you can end up with 2 molds instead of just one. There's another reason that's not quite so obvious, particularly to a beginning caster, and that is that a used mold is going to come to you already seasoned. And by seasoning, we mean that it often takes a substantial number of bullets cast by the mold before you start getting quality production regularly. A used mold is often ready to rock and roll as soon as you remove any storage or preservatives or oils that might be on there, and you'll start getting bullets from the very first cast, compared to a brand new mold that you're going to have to heat cycle a few times and possibly drop as many as 50 bullets or more before you start getting good quality production. I think the first thing that you want to do if you're considering buying a used mold is first do a little bit of research and see what that mold costs new, including shipping, and whether it's available anymore or not. Some of these molds that we collect are no longer in production, so buying them secondhand might be your only option. Oftentimes you'll see a mold advertised as new old stock, NOS, and if it's a mold that's still currently available, you certainly want to go compare to your online sources. Maybe you can get free shipping and get that mold into your house for less than what they're asking on online auction sites. Oftentimes what I see is that sellers of used bullet casting molds are gleaners of estate sales. And frequently those folks really don't know very much about the item that they're selling. They may have no knowledge at all of what the utility of these blocks are, and you look at their advertisements and they don't have much in the way of photographs. There's not enough there for you to make a determination on the condition of that mold, and that's primary to me. So let's talk about the things that you should look for, and if the photographs are not there, then you need to ask the seller if they can post the photographs of what I consider to be the essentials. All right, I'm going to bring you down in here close and we'll look at a couple of these. These are all 3 molds that I've purchased online. A couple of them up here were in very good condition. This one was in not so good condition. But there are some general categories that I look for. One, overall condition. Okay, does the mold appear to have been abused or not? What do the edges of the mold look like? Is there evidence that it has been cast or evidence that it is new? How do the parts seem to fit together? Does it look good there? How much rust is present, if any, and where is the rust? What is the overall condition of the hardware pieces? Okay. What are we looking at with the condition of our hardware? Is it a mold for which spare parts or rebuild kits can easily be obtained if needed? And does it come with anything else? Let's get into this in more detail and look at these general areas that I'm going to look for. And when I'm looking at all of this stuff, I'm asking myself, is this a mold that I'm going to be able to use right away, or is it one that I'm going to have to play doctor with? First up is this mold right here. This is the Lyman 429360, a mold that I don't believe is in current production. I bought this secondhand on eBay and gave $50 for it. And of the things that I look for, first of all, is the overall condition of the mold. Okay, I'm looking at the edges to see if it looks like it's been dropped. Okay, and this one, as you can see, a nice sharp edges, and I'm hanging on tight because I don't want to drop it. Okay, it looks really good. With respect to overall condition, one of my areas of most primary concern is the mold cavities themselves. Are they free of rust? Are there any obvious dings along these edges? In other words, the edges should appear sharp and crisp where they're supposed to be. I'm looking at the tops of the mold blocks along the edges of where the bullet base is being formed. Here's an example of a deal breaker. Look how ragged the edges of that bullet base are going to be. Pass on this one. And incidentally, if you see stuff that looks like this is just oil. Okay, sometimes in a photograph online, you look at that and go, oh, that's rust, and it's not. That's just some preserving oil, mineral oil that I have on there. Okay, we can look at this face down here and make sure that it is not all gouged up. Those marks, striations that you see there, those are factory. Okay, that's not abuse. We're looking at the condition of the sprue plate. Is it all beat up? Okay, does it lie flat across the tops of the mold blocks? Okay, we can look along this edge of our sprue plate where the mallet would be striking the sprue plate, and look and see how beat up these are. If they're really all dented up and got a lot of problems with that, that may be evidence of poor care on the part of the previous owner. Not only that, but if it's clear that there's a lot of dings on here and someone's been beating on it pretty hard, that may bend the sprue plate a little bit, and it can also damage our sprue bolt over here. So I look for that. Okay, this one again was pristine. Okay, it was perfect. We want to look at fit and fitment here. We're looking to see, do these mold blocks fit together along the seams? Okay, do they seem to be closing correctly? Okay, that's a thing. We don't want to see air gaps down through there. It's kind of hard to tell online because the seller may be showing these blocks partially separated. Okay, particularly if the handles are attached. You may not have them closed all the way. We want to look at the alignment pins and their associated holes on the opposite block. If those holes are all wallered out, it may cause the blocks to be misaligned when you close them, and that can end up with a misshapen bullet. You might get fins, you may get whiskers that sneak out the sides of the bullet. There's all kinds of things that can happen if those mold blocks don't align properly. So look for that. Here's an image that I picked up offline that shows what I'm talking about these holes being deformed. Okay, you see that? The edges of that alignment hole are deformed. It's not terrible here, but that may affect your evaluation of the mold. All right, so we look for that fit and fitment, making sure that our sprue plate, okay, is flat against the tops of those mold blocks like this one is. So that's another thing that we can look for. Next thing I want to look at is I'm looking for rust. The most important areas are here at the top of the blocks. These are all oily, okay, and into the cavities. Okay, where you'll see rust, sometimes are on the block faces. Okay, those are not as problematic as they are if there's rust in the cavities. If there's rust in the cavities to the point where the cavities are pitted, that's a deal breaker for me. Here's another example of an online photo. These cavities are rusted beyond reclamation, I think. A little bit of surface rust you can get off with some products like Evapor Rust or even Simple Green. Okay, you don't want to take a wire brush in here. You don't want to mess up the edges of the cavities. Here's an online photo again with what we're talking about when we say surface rust. We can deal with this. That one's redeemable. Some folks don't care if there's a little pitting or not, but I do. I don't want them pitted. Again, a little bit of surface rust, we can deal with that. I'm looking at the mold faces, the tops of the blocks here, okay, and in the cavities. Those are the most important areas to look for rust. If there's obvious rust on our handle pins in here, okay, then that could be an indication that these may be frozen shut, and you can ask the seller about that. Hey, are these handle bolts free? Do they turn freely? If it's pitting and rough surfaces down here, it may prevent the blocks from closing properly. So that's a different story. The outside edges, like the sides of the molds, are not quite as concerning. A little bit of surface rust there is purely cosmetic, not going to hurt anything. I want to look at the condition of the hardware itself. Okay, on our sprue plate bolt here, for example, I want to see if there's evidence that someone has been ham-fisted with it, used the wrong size screwdriver blade, and just got this thing all torn up to the point that it will be difficult to adjust. So there's one point right there that we look at as far as hardware goes. Those sprue plate bolts have a set screw, and it might either be a slotted type or an Allen type. This one shows a little bit of wear on it, but it's not bad at all. This one, the screw slot was perfect. Okay, we're also going to look at the handle bolts, see how much wear there is on the threads. You can see this one's got a little bit, but it's not horrible. Again, the condition of the slots down here, I want to see indication that the person has taken the time and had the care to use the correct sized screwdrivers on these and not get them all beat up. The other thing on the sprue bolt is that washer that you see there. Okay, take a look at that in your pictures. If the washer is bigger than the head of the bolt, it's probably not the original washer. Okay, that's a lock washer that's supposed to be on there, and if it's the correct one, it's probably the same diameter as the bolt, whether it's Lyman or RCBS. Here's an example of a washer that has been replaced with the wrong size. May or may not be an issue. The good news is that if the hardware is all beat up, you can get a rebuild kit from Lyman. not for RCBS that I've found. Rebuild kits for the modern Lyman molds are available. They're not expensive. They cost between $10 and I think $18 for the 4-cavity kit. So there's a 4-cavity kit, there's a double cavity, and there's a single cavity. And these are $9 or $10 for these. They're not expensive at all. And what you get a new sprue plate, and you get, hard to see in there, you get all the hardware. Okay, you get a new sprue plate bolt and washer, you get the sprue plate set screw, and you get the handle bolts. Okay, those come with the kits. Okay, it's important to note that there are some older Lyman molds that are smaller blocks. So that older small block Lyman mold will not work with the newer single cavity rebuild kit. The sprue plate's too big, okay, it won't fit, okay? So that's important to notice. The same thing with the double cavity. There are older Lyman double cavity mold blocks out there that are smaller than the newer ones, and this kit doesn't fit those. And you can get new sprue plates for the Lee 6-cavity molds. They don't come with any of the additional hardware, but these things are inexpensive, under $10 usually. The next thing I want to talk about quickly is what else do we get with this mold? In particularly, does it come with handles? All right. The handles add considerable value to the mold. Again, a set of Lyman handles or RCBS or Seiko handles brand new are $50. Lee handles, about $25. And especially in the case of some of these older small block Lyman molds, oftentimes you'll see them with handles like this, and these are great. I love these handles for the smaller molds. They're just really ergonomically correct. They fit well. It's important to know that not all of this type of Lyman handle will work with every old Lyman mold. There are double cavity and single cavity versions of these. So if you get the handles with the mold, that's good. What you're looking for on the handles is, are they all burnt up or not? Do the ferrules look good? This set's got a small little burn right there on the back side. Okay, a little more light on it there, but that's not significant. Okay, and again, looking for rust on these. This set was very close to being pristine. And these are not commercially available anymore. The only way you're going to get them is to buy them used. So that adds, figure out what they're worth to you to have the correct set of handles for that mold. It's not a total loss if you don't get an RCBS handle or a Lyman handle. You can often use the Lee handles, and you may already own a set of these, but certainly adds to the value of your used mold. All right, so if they're offering a set of handles with a sale, that increases the value. The next thing is do you get a storage box with it? RCBS storage boxes, I don't think are available as empty boxes anymore as for new stock. I've not seen them in a long time. You can still get Lyman boxes, although they don't look like this one. This particular mold I bought used also, of course, and it came with this nice plastic storage case. But you can get these Lyman boxes, okay, relatively inexpensively. I bought a couple of 10-packs of these once, and I think they were $25 for a pack of 10. So $2.50, not bad, and you can fit two cavity molds in there. These will not hold the Lyman 4-cavity molds. The 4-cavity is too big for those, but we have other options for storage of the Lyman 4-cavity molds. All right, older molds were sold in these cardboard boxes. Okay, so you may get one of those, and that's fine too. As you know, I like to kind of preserve my molds in mineral oil, and they'll soak through this cardboard, so I stick mine into a plastic bag of some sort inside that box so we don't get the oil leaking through. Lyman, older Lyman molds, okay, came in various types of cardboard boxes also. All right. One other item that may be included with your used mold is a top punch. And even if you don't traditionally lubricize, this is something that could be of value to you. If you own the Lee Universal Expander die, Al over at noebullets.com makes a part, an adapter that goes inside this die and allows you to use it as a seating die by using a top punch. Okay, and that can be really handy because that gives you a seating die with a stem that exactly fits your bullet. And these things are worth anywhere between $6 and $10 if you have to go buy one. Now I want to give you a quick look at a mold that I bought that had some problems. I looked closely at it. I asked the seller a couple questions, and I ended up buying it anyway. I got it pretty cheap, and I kind of got lucky. Even though it has some problems, they proved to be mostly cosmetic, and the mold works well. So let's get in here and look at this one. Okay, this is an RCBS mold, the 45-200 SWC, and you can see evidence that there was some rusting going on here. Okay, there's rust on the bottom. Okay, rust on the sides, and look at the edge here. This was all rusty, and it was already kind of chipped out and pitted like that, and I don't know what caused that. The rust was fairly heavy and encrusted there. Same thing on this corner there. All right, so I looked at that at first and I thought, I don't know, that looks pretty cruddy. So let's see if we can get some photos of the rest of the mold. Okay, so I looked at the top of the sprue plate here, and the rest of the sprue plate looked good. The bottom side, again, a little bit of rusting through there, but I thought, you know, I can probably slick that down and it won't be a problem. And it did. I did take this to my stone and smooth that off, and that's not going to be an issue anymore. Okay. Tops of the blocks got a little bit of evidence of rust going on there, but again, it's pretty smooth. It didn't seem to need any dressing. Good. When I got in here and looked at the cavities are not pitted. There was a little bit of rust down there. In fact, there might still be a little bit of surface rust in there, but not to the point where pitting had happened, and so I was okay with that. The sprue plate closes nice and tightly. Okay, there's no gaps in there. Okay, we do have this, you know, this one was pretty rusty, and it took me a little while to kind of work on that a little bit to get rid of some of that rust. But everything else on it looked good. Okay, you know, good enough anyway. This is cosmetic, this kind of rust. Not going to hurt anything. So you got to kind of figure out, you know, how much rust are you willing to live with as far as the cosmetic appearance of that mold goes. If you're willing to put up with a little bit of discoloration there, then go for it, as long as the price is right. But when you consider that I got this premium little guy here for 50 bucks, I would say that this one's not worth 50 bucks. All right, folks, there we are. We talked a little bit about some of the physical things that I look for in the purchase of a used mold. We looked at conditions of rust, we looked at the hardware, we looked at the condition of the cavities, the exterior, indications that the mold had been well cared for or abused. We want to know if it's a mold that has some issues with it. Are those parts replaceable or not? We looked at the idea of what else does it come with. Did you get a storage case? Do you get a set of handles with it? Those kinds of things will affect the value of your purchase. Personally, for molds like these, I don't want to pay more than $50, and I'm happy if they come with handles. If it's in good enough shape, this one here was in pristine condition, and I would have paid 50 bucks for that. It was in as new shape. That's a mold that would have cost close to $100 by the time I paid the taxes on it. brand new, but it's not available anymore. So think about that. You know, how much is this mold worth to you? I certainly think that a used mold is worth half what a new one costs if it's in good shape. More than that, I'm iffy on it. I don't buy Lee molds used. They're too cheap to buy online. You go get a brand new Lee mold from Midway with free shipping. You know, for 50 bucks, why would you want to go pay somebody $50 plus shipping for a used Lee mold? It's not worth it to me. So that's kind of where I am with buying a used molds. Those are some of the things that I look for. You never know 100% for sure. Certainly you should ask questions of the seller if you don't see what you're looking for, if the photographs are not clear enough. You can always ask them to add a few more pictures or send them to you personally and say, hey, I'm interested in this mold. Can you show me what the hardware pieces look like? Can you show me the tops of the mold blocks? Can you show me the bottom of the sprue plate? Those types of things. And ask specific questions. You know, do the handle bolts turn out? Are they frozen or not? So ask questions. Don't be afraid to do that. I've never had a seller turn down a request to add a couple pictures or answer a question. Okay, most folks are just like you and I. Okay, so those are the things that I look for. And I'm sure I'm overlooking something, and I fully expect that some of you who are experienced casters also have some ideas that you may like to add. The whole purpose of this video is for us to kind of supply a new caster with some information that might be helpful to them. So anything that the rest of you guys can add to this would be appreciated down there in the comments, I'm sure. So hopefully you got something out of this, maybe a little bit of information, some things that you can look for if it comes time for you to buy a mold online. And for now, that's all she wrote.